I think at some point I've made a mistake. I'm not entirely sure what I did, but it had to be a really shitty move for this movie to be on my plate. The Drawn Together movie is flat out the worst thing that I've ever reviewed, and I'm finally sure once again that it's the worst thing that I ever will review. Oh, I know that there's worse stuff out there. I'm just not gonna review it. Like all people, I have my limits, and this movie crossed all of them 2 miles ago. The first thing that I have to say is that this is the first video that I've had to censor at certain parts. Yeah, the movie is that bad. Let me put it this way. The back of the box advertises animated sex scenes. Why you'd want to watch it in low-grade flash animation, I have no idea. Second thing, I don't like the Drawn Together television show, but you will not hold this movie against that show. As far as I'm concerned, they are two separate entities, and almost everything that I say about this movie does not apply to Drawn Together, the show itself. Not even the lackluster third season. Judge the show on its own merits, not the merits of a shitty fucking movie that even the fans hate. I may or may not get to the actual show, but we gotta focus on this today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a big one. The Big 100. Steel yourself. This is gonna hurt. The movie starts in Bedrock. Present day Bedrock. In the bar, we see Toots, badly animated, getting drunk and smoking. The only reason that she's getting drunk and smoking is because she's pregnant. Like, if she was not pregnant in the story, she would not be smoking and drinking. That is, like, most of the jokes in the movie. Haha, isn't that awful? Aren't these people doing awful things? The more astute of you may have noticed that this is not a joke. Just because you play a laugh track over something like a terrorist bombing does not make it funny. Foxy, another Drawn Together cast member, is here.
We can't be seen together! You'll get us killed!
Drawn Together wasn't exactly a show about the characters being in any real danger, so this is probably going to be just as confusing to fans of the show as it is to new viewers. Luckily for me, one of this movie's flaws is that it doesn't really reference the show all that much. I think there are a reference here and there, but not too much. And this is definitely a problem for a movie based on a television show, especially one that's not an origin story. But on the bright side, it does make it a lot easier to review. I don't need to refresh the show so much. So, what's infinity minus like 5%? Infinity? Okay, this movie is still infinity times hard to review though. Goddamn, infinity is such a confusing concept. They start kissing because...
Toot, I can't change the past, but I can change the future.
Can you please stop existing? Like, right now. That will make the future happy.
Back. Oh yeah? Well, I've met someone too. I've met a man who loves me for me. A man who's willing to cheat on his wife because he's a closeted homosexual who thinks I'm a man. A man who refers to my vagina as a manhole.
She is talking about Barney Rubble, and I'd like to give this movie a solemn fuck you right out of the gate. You know, the whole thing about the Flintstones being the first primetime animated show on television, and without it, The Simpsons wouldn't exist, Family Guy would not exist, and South Park wouldn't exist. And without any of those, Drawn Together wouldn't exist. But if you want to call your grandfather gay, go right ahead.
Clara's dead. Clara? She's dead.
This scene is totally useless if you watch the whole movie. In fact, because this scene is here, it gets rid of almost all of the suspense within the movie. Because of the scene, we know who is going to live and who is going to die for the most part. And in a story where the characters are actually in danger, that is the last thing you want. To upcoming writers, prologues are useless. Almost 100% of the time, any kind of prologue is pointless. In fact, you are more likely to get a book published if you do not include a prologue.
The same way we all gonna die is wrong.
Your location's been compromised. Get out of there now!
Oh my god, not Waldorf! Please, I do not want to see that fucking Yellow Devil as long as I live. A death by a firing squad would not unleash the sheer schadenfreude that this damn bastard deserves. Not bad for a SpongeBob XB, I do say. Waldorf tells him to jump off the roof to escape from a rocket.
He's got to be here somewhere.
Get it? Because the car runs on foot power. So the rocket blows up a dinosaur's ass. And no, I'm not censoring everything. Just the nudity stuff that could get this video pulled from YouTube. And yes, in America, we have a very weird attitude towards censorship. Something as natural as the human body needs to be censored, but even the most abhorrent violence is allowed to be free and uncriticized. And even the sexual innuendo that gets censored can sometimes be hypocritical.
I'm Jerry Smith, and I love sucking big, sweaty and licking, disgusting, furry testicle sacks.
You know, it would be really interesting for an adult cartoon that doesn't give a crap about censorship to highlight this cognitive dissonance and make fun of how stupid it is. Is South Park on? Damn it, I'm procrastinating again. I just really don't want to see the violence or the nudity in this movie. The main characters run over Barney Rubble in a car. Now let's get a counter for how many times they run over a beloved cartoon character because they think that vehicular manslaughter is funny enough to be a running gag. We get the title sequence and we see where they wasted all of the animation budget. Now, if you don't know, each of the characters are drawn together are a parody of various genres of cartoons, which is not a bad concept. Drawn together does not have a bad concept at all, and I can see the appeal of applying an adult edge to classic cartoon tropes, when it's done well and not just for the sake of it. Believe it or not, it takes a lot of talent to properly deconstruct the innocence of childhood icons. You could just turn Willy Wonka into an obvious sociopath, and it might say something about the original, but any Joe Schmo can do that, and it doesn't make it funny. The actual show I've drawn together, never mind about the actual show. Right now, we need to talk about this cheap, tawdry imitation that barely even tries. We cut to 6 months earlier, before Clara is going to die, and immediately we see how cheap the Flash animation is. It's more apparent in other scenes like the one where they're trying to parody Disney, but all throughout the movie, everything looks very stilted, especially involving most of the animals. We cut to the drawn together house.
Good morning, people and Foxy.
Get it? Because she's a Disney princess, she's racist. Either that's exactly what you'd expect, or that's never what you'd expect. Either way, they beat it into the ground over the series. Everyone gets their own little intro before they hear the next competition. Waldor changes into a bunch of things because we can't go 5 minutes without a dick joke. And Waldor is probably the biggest example of at least this movie's laziness. The job was simple. Take a SpongeBob character and make it more adult. Pervert it a bit. The character who frequently, innocuously abuses and destroys people and property, seems to have a creepy crush on Squidward, is guilty of kidnapping and home invasion, doesn't give a shit about the law, and has done many other creepy things. It should not be rocket science to make him an adult character without relying on fucking dick jokes! So the producer says that their competition is to put on heels and stomp on puppies and kitties. We're 6 minutes in out of like 80. Also, the producer ends up masturbating to this. So let's talk about shock humor, shall we? Because this movie is almost entirely shock humor. Shock humor is the comedy equivalent to jump scares. They're both used for the same reason, to send people over the edge into an uncomfortable place, or by hacks who have absolutely no idea what they're doing. An entire comedy with nothing but shock humor is not funny, the same way an entire horror movie with nothing but jump scares is not scary. What do I feel about the shock humor itself, though? I mean, I should probably be completely losing my shit right now. They're abusing animals like it was happening in Ren Seeks Help. Well, first of all, this show that claims it's going beyond all taste doesn't seem to have the balls to actually show the actual action of squishing puppies and kitties. Remember, Ren Seeks Help went all the way, and give it this, it was animated fluidly. The animals in this movie are so badly animated, it looks like a cheap one-person webtoon. You don't get any effect whatsoever. And like I said, on top of that, they never actually show the actual violence on screen. And you can't do shock humor halfway. It's like setting off an explosive halfway. The producer tries leaving without even saying who won. And when he's called out, he just gives essentially lip service to Captain Hero winning. That phrase, lip service. It's giving me flashbacks to later on in this movie, I'm telling you. This makes Foxy a little bit confused.
I can't be the only one who thinks these competitions is completely random and arbitrary.
Isn't that the definition of a reality show? They break the fourth wall so many times, it's hard to know exactly how genre savvy any of these characters are. The others laugh at Foxy because she's terrible at solving mysteries. We learn this in a Scooby-Doo flashback where someone gets shot in the face with a shotgun.
Henry, don't give up on me, you hear? Don't you give up on me.
Survey says, meh.
Foxy Love, you're the worst mystery-solving musician that's ever lived!
Yeah.
Is this one of those weird jokes where the show screws up obscure cartoon references? Because facts are facts, people, and the 70s disagrees with that statement. I mean, they can intentionally be wrong, but that's an odd joke. Intentionally getting obscure humor wrong.
I got one. Foxy, the only thing you're good at is giving head, and you managed to do the opposite.
Never mind, it's not important. Let's just move on. Let's just move on to, oh god, the beginning of the plot. One of the worst scenes in the movie. Walter tries to apologize to Foxy because, I don't know, it's his lesson of the week or something. He tries to apologize by screwing things up a lot. Okay, great. You're halfway there in the element of satire. You brought up an observation or a flaw of the original work. Next thing to do is change it up a little bit and make fun of it. Because if you don't, you're pretty much plagiarizing the flaws of the original work.
What the hell is wrong with you, wood dog? There is no good explanation for what I've done.
Yeah, that's the closest that we get. Then Foxy realizes that she can swear without being censored. Okay, let's talk about this little observation of hers. In the original show, words like fuck were definitely censored, and it's definitely an interesting idea for breaking the fourth wall. Unfortunately, the movie has a couple of problems with this. Number one, this movie was made years after the show was off the air, and the only way to watch the series would be on DVD. And the DVDs of Drawn Together are not, nor have they ever been, censored. So if you didn't happen to watch it in its original television airing, this would make no sense. The other problem is the comedy revolving around the censorship. After Foxy's animation is in a painfully obvious cycle, she randomly goes about swearing because she can. When we figure out that Waldor can't swear, they get the brilliant idea to show his penis. Okay, I am definitely censoring this, but you know how I complained a lot about Photoshop animation in Breadwinners and Pickle and Peanuts? Imagine that with a penis. A very big penis. I don't know whose penis it is, and I'd rather not know, but they drag the scene out, and it really feels like this movie is trying to teabag me. And do you want to know the really funny thing? Like, the only plausible funny scenario of this scene? The scene would actually have a chance of being funny if I actually censored out his penis. Do you know why? When it comes to humor like this, the reaction is always funnier than what's being reacted to, and the characters need to be more disgusted than the audience. These are basic tenets of comedy. Let's just move on, because this movie is going to try to repeatedly top my disgust in all kinds of beautifully creative ways. We cut to some of the guys wanting to play poker with Captain Hero.
Special guy time is far more important to Hero than being with some cheap floozy who probably doesn't even secretly eat his toenail clippings, so at least a little part of Hero can always be inside him.
He's gay and creepy, get it? That's everything with him throughout the entire movie. In this movie, some of the characters get the shaft, and either Xander or Ling Ling gets it the worst. Clara has more to do than either of them, and she dies halfway through. Speaking of which, Captain Hero is dating a corpse. This is what he does for the entirety of the movie. It is all he does as the corpse rots away. For an entire movie, you've reduced one of your main characters to a running gag. I get that he's the stupid hero type, and this is probably in line with his character, but it's a fucking movie. You have to do more than relegate one of your main characters into a running background joke. He essentially kidnaps the corpse from her mourning family. Beyond being a stupid joke, it doesn't make any sense in any context. Like, this would only work if he confused a call for help, or there was actually someone in need. What I'm saying is that there's no setup to the joke. It's a basic tenet of comedy. Another one that they fucked up. All that has to happen is one of Molly's family members to say one fucking line, and this joke may have made sense. I don't know if it's just my sex repulsion, but this is putting me further into nausea. I don't know. Any of you people in the audience, is this doing anything for you? Please tell me that embalming fluid is this dude's kryptonite. So with that scene being totally pointless, Foxy goes and tries to figure out why they're being censored. Wow, she is terrible at mysteries. I already gave you the answer. It's because adult DVDs don't censor themselves. And you haven't been on television in years. I've already said this before, but the animation is really painfully stilted and limited. Given this though, I really feel like I'm watching a Scooby-Doo ripoff with a pointless spin-off character from the 1970s. Foxy finds the Drawn Together control room and realizes that everything is offline. She comes to the conclusion that their show has been cancelled. Alright, my suspension of disbelief is totally shattered. I cannot believe anything that's going on here. A SpongeBob character that knows the meaning of the word cancelled. In what universe? In what fucking universe? So, Foxy just begins swearing. Oh, I get the satire they're trying to pull. The second we remove censorship rules, shows will immediately take advantage of those standards being removed and do nothing else with the material. If we give shows the ability to swear, they will just sit around swearing, doing absolutely nothing else. Honestly, shock shows are probably their own worst enemy when it comes to censorship. They claim to hate censorship while giving it the best arguments for censorship imaginable. And that's going to come back again and again with this movie specifically. Yes, you have the fucking ability to swear uncensored now. Do something with it. Dramatically, swearing is used to emphasize a point and draw excess attention to the speaker. Swears, when used properly, convey more meaning than, let's say, a lesser adjective or interjection. Shit has more meaning than ouch. And then everyone starts fighting randomly. I have no idea why. Meanwhile, Waldor decides to figure out if they're really canceled or not. We get a lot of extreme facial expressions as excuses for actual jokes. Wait a minute, I thought that Spanky Ham was the parody of internet animation. And yes, he finds out that he's canceled. We cut to the producer and his family.
Gosh, I love you. I don't know what I'd do if anything would happen to you. Oh, how emotionally invested I am in you staying safe and remaining alive.
Pointing out how obvious his kidnapping is doesn't make it any less obvious, any more funny, or any less cliche. His boss comes because they want to make an extreme point that he's Jewish. He can't answer the phone today because it's the Sabbath. Also, his neighbor likes to mess with him on that aspect. Look, I've seen just about every joke about every religion there is. It's getting old. Anyway, the boss of Drawn Together wants all of his cast members erased. Okay, I'm pretty conflicted about this. On the positive side, it gives me some hope this movie will have a happy ending. On the other side, though, an evil, money-grubbing CEO would take each of the characters and have them in their own spin-off show, even if they originally came from another show to begin with. To do the job properly, he decides to use...
Yes, the intelligent, smart, robot, animation, eraser, lady!
And because you knew that he had to be involved in this somehow, the robot is voiced by Seth MacFarlane. I make a joke, but there's nothing I can do to make him funny. Now you'll notice that the robot's name is Israel. Every single line of dialogue about it is just a blanket statement meant directly to offend someone.
Smart robot animation eraser lady!
Israel? Why the fuck is it on our land when we already live here?
Israel must be aggressive to survive.
It's not funny because no one in narrative means anything that's actually said. I doubt that even the creators mean what they're saying.
No! Without the distraction of the cameras, I'll have nothing to keep me from hearing the voices in my head!
Cut their throats and drink the children's blood, Waldor. Their youth will be your youth.
That definitely sounds like SpongeBob, except not in any way whatsoever, not even in a satirical sense. How hard is it to pervert a character properly? Yes, I know that I'm kind of picking on this movie for not really getting animation references and understanding the characters that it's got XPs of. I mean, it's just a show where characters of all different animation genres come together off camera, essentially, and reveal their true personalities. I'm being selfish, demanding that they get the references right. I mean, good God, Betty Boop had a best friend called Bimbo. How hard could this be?
Cup the balls.
I'd cup.
Get it? He's gay. The Drawn Together gang figures out that they were replaced by the, Suck My Taint show, which is a poor parody of South Park. This is gonna be interesting. The producer comes by and tries to rescue the gang from the robot's attack.
Well, I ain't going nowhere until you tell us why in the hell we was canceled.
Have you ever even seen your show? It's filthy, it's racist, and it has a shocking lack of Dave Chappelle.
And was surpassed by other better shocking racist shows that better knew what they were doing and could handle dark subject matter better. And you guys kind of dropped massively in quality in the third season, and...
Run!
You know, that might actually be a clever use of animation if the animation quality wasn't so poor and actually lasted a little bit longer. If you want to see actually good animation deterioration effects, Gumball has a really good use of it, where they go from animation to storyboards as reality collapses in on itself. Back to this show. While they're getting away, Captain Hero tries to save his dead girlfriend.
He really is delightfully retarded.
No, Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy is, because he annoys the characters far more than he annoys the audience, and he has a certain charm to him that Captain Hero can never replicate.
I'm a woodpecker. Except with dirt.
Also, the XP of Superman being the stupid one is cliched as fuck to begin with. It's always a stupid Superman. No other Superman is anything but stupid, and no other superhero gets to be stupid parodied. Captain Hero saves his girlfriend as the robot blows up the house. They're about to have a maybe sweet moment until Captain Hero bursts in and continues to... Excuse me, I'll be right back, I have to lurch. The robot begins to chase them down, but Clara decides that her kingdom is only a few miles away. She decides this while they're driving through Wile E. Coyote's desert. Kinda thought that Warner Brothers was pretty damn distant from Disney, but whatever. This movie breaks the fourth wall so many times, it's halfway to hopping dimensions. Also, they run over the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote shoots himself. And of course, there has to be feces in the shot. Maybe it's just because Roger Rabbit is such a damn good movie, but a world where all cartoons live together seems like it'd have more to offer than just random observations, and wouldn't try to disgrace the medium it owes its entire existence to in so many ways. The van crashes, but the only thing the robot finds inside is the producer.
You explain to boss what happened. Israel's sick of being blamed for every little fucking thing that goes wrong in the desert.
An artist tries to offend his viewer when he wants that viewer to question a delicate sensibility around a controversial issue. And to use offense for its artistic purpose, you need to dedicate time and put things into context. If this movie was a comedian, here's what it would do. It would walk onto a stage, shout the N-word, and then walk off the stage. And it would do this in every single show. We got some flashbacks that involve a lot of nudity that I'm not showing you, where the cast realizes that they're not the child-friendly versions of the characters they appear to be as. One of those flashback sequences involved Molly with a lot of naked superheroes having sex. Is necrophilia like a really popular fetish? Is it something that allosexual people find funny? Is it something I'm not supposed to find disgusting and abhorrent? Because I find it disgusting and abhorrent, and doing it for the 15th time throughout the movie doesn't make it any funnier. And besides, Molly hasn't been dead for very long. She was at the wake when Captain Hero picked her up.
In fact, ain't no real cartoon characters would do any of the things we done doed.
Peter Griffin, Quagmire, the entire cast of Family Guy. I remind you that Seth MacFarlane himself is involved in this production. You're also making fun of South Park repeatedly. Like, what? Seriously, like what? They decide that the only way to save themselves is to get themselves uncanceled. And they begin their quest to find the SMT girl, thinking that she is the only one who could save them. Clara decides to return to her kingdom, thinking that she's real.
I always dreamed of going to Disney World.
You said you'd take me to Disney World!
Get it? He's gay. Also, the most obvious joke to make about Link in the history of ever. Seriously, everyone makes the joke about Link being gay. Everyone. Everyone makes the joke about the princess being dirty as shit. Everyone makes the joke about the superhero being stupid.
Yeah, we need to get our show back. Otherwise, I'll have to go back to my old gig exposing myself to children.
Oh my god, that joke actually worked. It's a referential joke that actually works, considering that SpongeBob himself has spent entire episodes naked. Although, that makes an earlier joke even worse. Also, Toots steals the mystery van. The producer talks to his boss.
For Christ's sake, Jew producer, they must be destroyed!
Seriously, this is the most fucking unbelievable CEO I've ever seen.
My family from me.
They did?
I've never spoken of this before to anyone with Israel by my side. I guess I feel safe.
The CEO's family was in a car one day when his daughter saw a poster of her drawn together, and this has them drive off a cliff, and a bunch of other stuff. You know, despite being a lot simpler, this joke was much better in Roger Rabbit. Why does this guy hate tunes? One of them killed his brother. How? Dropped a piano on his head. Also, the lack of censorship, which this movie is trying to fight for, has apparently, killed 2 people. The producer doesn't want to help, but the CEO has apparently kidnapped his kid. Then we're hit with some high-pitched, annoying microphone sounds. Yeah, I get it that a broken microphone would torture speaker people, but when torturing a character, you're not supposed to also torture the audience. Quite the opposite, in fact. You're supposed to make it comical and funny for the audience. Drawn Together is a comedy on some level. We cut to a ripoff of Disney World, and this is where the bad animation is definitely the most noticeable. Look, when Family Guy tried to insult Disney, at least they put in the money and the effort to get things looking as close to the stylish Disney as possible. Clara meets a couple of guards who say that she's merely impersonating a princess, which is a serious felony. Trumpets blast and we see the terrible animation. I'm going to be honest, it looks like they just colored in the fucking storyboards. We see the king, who is not Clara's father, and the actual princess twirls and exposes her genitals, which I have to censor. Hey, producers of this movie, you do know that most Disney princesses are underage, right? Ariel, the Disney princess closest to appearance here, is 16 years old, but they have been as young as 14. I don't know what to say. There's the assumption that just nudity is funny, not actually understanding the reference or the possible teenage nudity. Lots of things to be pissed at. Everyone calls Clara an imposter, and they don't react at all like they're in a Disney production. And this is another serious misstep. I mean, come on. You've got a raunchy princess parody juxtaposed with what should be an innocent Disney production. This should not be difficult to do properly. Before the show actually tells any jokes at all, they're all thrown into the dungeon. We cut to the others getting to the SMT show. And yep, we see the cutout style very reminiscent of South Park.
This is horrible.
She's a little girl who sings about her taint. It's genius.
Look, there's a lot of ways of making little girls doing adult things funny, like turning the Girl Scouts into the Mafia. But it does take some work and creativity. Having them shout swears like this only works if you do it quickly and you're trying to be shocking quickly.
It tain't corporate greed, and it tain't the politicians who have drained our economy. It's the lack of personal responsibility.
You do know that even in the worst episodes, South Park creates a whole story around the issue they're trying to convey. And it's Family Guy that has the shock value messages duct taped to the end of the shock value episode, right? And the shows are immensely different quality because of that fact, right? And you do know that the shows are of immensely different quality because of that little fact.
True. I never thought of that before. I normally don't laugh at taint humor, but this is wrapped in such an important message.
We're about 22 minutes into this review, and just now I'm deciding that this is going to be quite the long review. So they think that South Park is just a bunch of shock with an out-of-place message in the middle, i.e. the reason that Family Guy is terrible and what South Park has moved beyond.
And when did it become a crime to be passionate about your work?
When Viacom bought the network.
Here? This is where you want to rest? This is the single most dangerous place you could be situated. There are so many other places you could be, Israel. It would be...
Maybe if I ignore them, they'll stop being lazy and actually put some work into their political commentary. It's one joke like this after another throughout the whole fucking movie! Give me a reason why I should care about your opinion on this issue. The producer is hit with a newspaper that tells him where to find Clara, who is already scheduled for execution. Yay! I am going to assassinate someone on death row. That is a brilliant move. Speaking of which, they're rotting in a dungeon. Clara tries to do princess stuff, but she fails when Xander says anything at all. Clara reaches through the bars and gets her arms chopped off. Okay, back to the other plot. The SMT girl seems to know who the Drawn Together gang is, despite no one else in the entire world knowing who they are.
Of course you were canceled. You guys were filthy and offensive without ever having a point.
Good God, how many times are you going to have this guy stutter? Also, you know the show SpongeBob? It does have a point. It's called being funny! Being funny is a point to existing. If that's what you want your point to be, so be it. But it's still a point. And that is something this movie refuses to understand. And on top of that, just having a random point doesn't really give you much of a reason to exist.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
Oh, by the way, Rick and Morty is probably the perfect antithesis to this movie.
These days, if you want to be raunchy and funny on TV, you need to also be relentlessly preachy.
Oh, like Rick and Morty. Wait a minute. Okay, let's be fair. Back when this movie came out in 2010, 5 years ago, that was more or less the conventional wisdom. You know, like the conventional wisdom that 2D animated movies won't do very well. You know, the kind of conventional wisdom that pigeonholes the medium and stops people from actually getting money. But that original conventional wisdom, Drawn Together never followed. Drawn Together was canceled because it sharply declined in its third season. It wasn't because it refused to be preachy, it was because it refused to be funny. The SMT girl tells them that they need to go to Make a Point Land and get a point from the Make a Point Wizard. Yay, the journey truly begins about 40 minutes in. Good God, this movie has so much fucking padding.
Time. Really? Because if you're lying, I'll cut you. I'll cut you to the fucking bone.
Okay then. The SMT girl agrees to take them there if she gets introduced to the rest of the gang, who is either gay because that's his whole character, crying over their missing limbs, or being a necrophile because they have no character. Speaking of which, you know the most overused joke about Link or the adventurer hero being gay? It doesn't make sense! The adventurer heroes are most known for going after the damsels in distress. Link has always been trying to save the princess. In the actual cartoon, which Xander is probably supposed to be based on, because these are all animated characters, he was constantly trying to get a kiss from Zelda. Through shenanigans that I don't even want to go over, we end up waiting for a corpse to help them break out because everyone is a fucking moron. Everyone being a moron, by the way, only ends up being funny if there's someone else to point it out and suffer for it. That's why characters like Squidward or Meg exist. And yes, those shows do go too far way too often, but the existence of characters like Squidward or Meg are needed for a show to work on all cylinders. You need a straight man to give the insanity some perspective. For some reason, the corpse's plan works and gets them out of the cage. I'm only thinking of how much easier Clara must be to animate without arms. Arms can be a fucking bitch to animate. Also, Xander has a lot of really creepy facial expressions throughout this, as more excuses for actual jokes. And Clara runs at the guards and gets killed. As soon as the rest of them escape, they are all found by the robot. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang is looking for them. but they are all very tired. Look, audience, no animation. That is until the carriage conveniently finds them and most of the group is reunited. Except Clara, who everyone finds is dead. Yeah, let's make fun of the show that got Hanna-Barbera out of the rut and practically saved them in the 80s from going completely bankrupt, allowing them to be bought by Cartoon Network 10 years later and producing the What a Cartoon Show, which sparked every single one of the cartoons. These cartoons are famous and popular for a reason, and the Smurfs get run over, because the third time of running over much better, much more important, and better respected cartoons as a cheap joke really pisses people off. The producer has a last-minute change of heart, and this leads to the carriage sinking underwater. How do they figure out how to get out of this one? One of the worst scenes in the entire movie. One of the most tedious scenes in all of animation.
Commentary.
Commentary?
Commentary. They usually have director's commissary on these things. Let's listen to the commentary. Maybe they'll tell us how to get out of here.
Oh god, not the 40th wall. So now we get to listen to the directors talk about their movie. I promise to be nice to people, but I have to give you guys a warning.
So, wow, this movie just keeps on going.
I hear them.
It's a long thing. And this movie,
How do we get
I
out
thought
of
it was
here?
actually a bad
Shut
idea.
the fuck up and
in the beginning,
listen.
and it actually might very well be a bad idea.
Yes, there are a lot of things that I'd very much like to say right now, but I promise not to say those kind of things anymore, even though this seems to be very clearly a sign of contempt towards the audience.
But Dave, he needed the money. So I had to do it.
Matt married into money.
Who the
so
hell would ever want to
he doesn't
listen to
worry about
this?
money as much as I
It
do.
used to be money.
I seriously hope that this is a joke and they're not flat out admitting that they made a lazy piece of shit just to get paid. Also, in the background, no animation. Like, none at all. For the longest period I've legitimately seen in any cartoon ever. Longer than any Family Guy episode, I swear.
How the hell are we going to get him out of this scene? We don't have any ideas. And I'm pretty sure you're the one who's like, hey, why don't they just suck on Xander's dick? And Xander's dick's got oxygen, because you're always like...
I have no comment. I'm just going to pretend that this is a bunch of horrible jokes and not actually their creative process.
I'm pretty sure you're the one who's like, hey, why don't they just suck on Xander's dick? And Xander's dick's got oxygen, because you're always like, the first idea is, hey, they can suck each other's dicks.
Hey, buddy, it's pretty horrible for the audience, too. Can we speed this up? If I wanted to listen to director's commentary, I would have listened to the fucking director's commentary. Which, by the way, probably makes this lazy-ass scene incredibly confusing.
How we come out with a lot of these scenes. It's like, who haven't we used in a while? We're like Ling Ling. What if we pull his tail and he inflates like a raft?
Considering that Ling Ling does, like, nothing of any significance anywhere in this movie, I'm further inclined to thinking that this is another joke. Also, they make Foxy take off her shirt just because. If I wanted to see Rule 34 of your characters, I'd just browse the Googles. I don't need to spend $14 on a DVD. You know what? It'd probably be better constructed on the Googles. It really, really would. The cast goes and they quest to find Toots off screen. Then the movie decides to replay the prologue. Like, almost without change. Good God, what was the budget of this movie? It's the same damn scene. Oh, except for the animated sex scene in 3D, which we are not watching. Once again, if I wanted to see porn, which I don't, it's called the internet. I could see porn of pretty much any cartoon I wanted. But speaking of porn, there's a reason that most of it does not have a plot. Porn and plot kind of get in the way of each other. We're 50 minutes into this movie. If you bought this movie to get your rocks off and wanted to just see the animated sex scene, I'm sorry to say, but you're gonna be horny for quite a while. We are 50 minutes into this. If you're desperate to watch porn, you're not gonna want to wait for 50 fucking minutes. And you also have to go through Waldorf's uncensored bits, which I'm not too sure, but I'm imagining that's quite the boner killer. But like I said before, this is pretty much the same, complete with the dinosaur being shot in the ass. The only difference is that it's Betty Rubble shooting at them. Oh, by the way, blind fucking references aren't funny. Oh wait, that means the entire movie isn't funny. That's all it is. Just blind references towards random cartoons with a bunch of raunch. The Roger Rabbit comparison again. Here's a question I have to ask you about it. How much about cartoons and animation do you need to know to find the movie Roger Rabbit funny? All you need to know is what a cartoon stereotypically is. And yes, there are plenty of references to all kinds of different cartoons. But if you're new to the medium, you won't be lost. In fact, because of how well Roger Rabbit is constructed, it's a great entry point. In Drawn Together's case, you need to be familiar with so many different kinds of cartoons. And they treat those same cartoons with such little respect that if you are familiar with them, beyond names and styles, it's bound to piss you off. And the observations they made, they're just ground level easy. S'mores being communist. Wile E. Coyote having no purpose without the Roadrunner. I've seen these before. Multiple times. The king is on the phone with the CEO, and he's not too impressed. So the CEO has the robot erase all of Disney World.
Just to be on the safe side, erase the whole place.
But sir, this is the happiest place on Earth.
With public executions and people in poverty and... Wait. So, the Drawn Together gang finally finds the SMT girl. And you know what that means? Oh boy, we get to take a run through Pity Town. They take a rocket powered by pissing people off. No wait, it's powered by shit and pissing people off. On the ship, Ling Ling gets Captain Hero to break up with Molly. No, Captain Hero, don't! She's your entire character and your entire purpose in the movie. You'll be nothing more than a background character if you do that. Oh wait, I don't give a fuck.
Make a point land.
Where? I can't see it.
It's right over there. Between Why You So Bitter About Being Canceled land and you had 3 or 4 seasons, you should be happy with what you got. Most shows don't even get that land.
Lightyear!
You're mocking me, aren't you?
Oh, no.
They arrive in Make a Point lands, which so happens is there's just a bunch of shock humor. And I need more censorship than I have the capability of adding. But here's the basic gist of what happens. When there's a bunch of shock humor, Spanky Pig thinks it's funny. Then the SMT girl tries to be like South Park and instead acts like Family Guy and gives some sort of shocking message. And Spanky Pig doesn't think it's funny anymore. Also, from now on, I'm going to call Spanky Pig Mouthpiece and SMT Girl Strawman. It sounds pretty damn appropriate. They are faced with the giant who shits in his own mouth. I think this movie has surgically removed my gag reflex. Come on, we're in the home stretch. I can do this. God, I shouldn't say that word either. Reminds me too much of the goddamn T-Rex I refuse to show you.
Who has come forth seeking a point?
I humbly present to you what's left of the Drawn Together gang.
Oh my.
You passed butter.
They finally see the wizard, who believes that having a point cannot save them now. But after some begging, he decides to give them a point. With some theatrics, they are given a point. Also, using all of your animation budget in one specific part of your movie is like using all of your gas in one specific part of your road trip. Mouthpiece decides not to open the box because...
Doesn't seem right. I mean, maybe we don't want a point. Don't you see? If I can't fart or vomit or fill up an ice tray with the afterbirth of Foxy's miscarriage and hand them out as ice pops to terminally ill children on my hospital tours without making some kind of point, then maybe it's just not worth it.
Maybe I'd listen to what you had to say if this movie wasn't such a disgusting waste of time. Do you know why you should have a point? Because no one wants to see any of the shit you've thrown in my fucking face!
I don't want to let dead chicks fuck me in my mouth for social commentary. I mean, what's wrong with just doing it because it makes me feel good?
Because it's disgusting as fuck. People like to laugh and think and even be scared, but no one anywhere likes to be disgusted. The point of the emotion of disgust is to keep us away from things. Don't have a point and be as raunchy as fuck. You'll be hated, despised, and yes, deserve to be erased. Or instead of preaching what you clearly hate, you could spend this time trying to be funny. And like I said, being funny is a point to existing. And by the way, personally, I've not been kind to things that literally have no point. Even if they're not raunchy as fuck. Everything about this movie, every single piece of it, has been a much better argument than I could possibly conceive to why this logic doesn't work. It defeats itself. Why should you have a point? Because this movie is fucking terrible and it doesn't have a point. Why should you have a point? Because when you don't have a point, you go around disgusting people and boring people. When shows exist just to shock, they always turn out terrible. Always. There are rules to comedy, and if you fail at reaching them, then your comedy will fail. Waldor takes the point box, and it's a bomb that ends up killing him. We're finally at the climax of the movie with all the enemies. Yay! So much tongue kissing in this movie. For the record, I am asexual, and sex stuff intrinsically disgusts me. But after so many times, I am generally curious. Does anyone anywhere feel, I don't know, like laughing, turned on, disgusting? I love this perspective. They do it so much that it's just lost all meaning. They're about to die, but the producer tries to protect them. After some convincing, the robot throws the CEO into a spike on the wall, and he has enough bombs to blow all of Make a Point land up. In order to save them, it shits out Bam Bam. On no level is this funny, and even worse, on no level does this make sense. Yes, she was fucking Barney, but Betty is Bam Bam's mother, and he was already alive. half of the references in this movie don't make any kind of logical sense at all. And a joke needs at least some strand of logic so the audience can relate to what's going on. Like I said, that's the point of having a straight man. And that's why blind references don't work. There needs to be some strand to reality. The producer tries to save the gang and tells them to run. Because cliché, the bombs go off and everyone's running just ahead of the explosion. But the shit-eating monster manages to save them. Yay! Back at home, the living members cry over the destroyed house, and the producer's son comes by. Fortunately, he can't give them their show back. But what he can do is give them a direct-to-DVD movie. This makes no fucking sense! Throughout the entire movie, they've been making references about how they're in a movie. Your fourth wall jokes are crashing into each other now. Does this movie understand anything at all? Thank God it ends up with them blowing themselves up. It's over. It's finally over. Everything about this movie is wrong. No, that doesn't even sum it up. It's like one of the most wrong animated things I've ever seen. And I don't just mean it's constantly shocking like Human Centipede or Where the Dead Goes to Die. It doesn't understand anything about anything. It doesn't understand anything about storytelling, characters, making a movie based on a television show, making a movie in general, making comedy, making animation, making characters. I already said that, but I don't give a shit anymore. Not only that, it's arrogant in its ineptitude. Like, this is probably the movie I'd imagine Peggy Hill making if she was on ecstasy, cocaine, and had been punched in the head with a shovel several times. But worse than all of that, it feels like it's bitter. It's bitter that better shows have lasted longer because they're better, and that it can't get to that level no matter how hard they try. And it's definitely skill that's the issue. There are so many missed opportunities and just plain confused moves. If the movie didn't shock, and it consistently fails to do that the more you watch it and the further you get, it wouldn't do anything at all, beyond throwing out blind cartoon references like they had a point.